Okay, good evening, members, officers, members of the public, and people listening to us at home, and welcome to today's planning meeting. A couple of things. Before we start, I would like to introduce somebody. We have Angela Sharma here, Deputy Monitoring Officer. She just joined us a couple of weeks ago. Just like to introduce to her, to the committee members. Angela. Thank you. Thank you. All right, yeah. And can I ask members to switch their phones off, please, or put them on silent? And the members of the public as well, please, put their phones on silent. And one more thing, because we all know it's Ramadan going on, so 5 to 8, we'll have a 10 minutes break, just for people to break their fast. Okay, right. Item number 1, apologies for absence.
I've not received any, and I believe
I think Dan's apologies. Yeah.
Yeah, Councillor Bowring is unavailable today.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Todd, did you say someone else?
No.
No. Okay.
Thank you. Item 2, declaration of interest. Sorry, yeah,
Sorry, Chair. Councillor Nagra for lateness.
okay. Thank you. Okay. Go on.
I think I've just received one other apology, which is from Councillor Atwell. Oh, she's here. She's here. Sorry.
Right. Item 2, declaration of interest. Members? Yeah, Councillor Lal.
Just wanted to mention that I've had several notifications by email from a number of the agenda items on the meeting tonight.
Yeah, I think we all had on all items, and item 1, Hanworth Park, we had on both sides, for against and for in favor as well. I think everybody has the same, yeah? Yes, Councillor Luki?
I've had correspondence with people from Hanworth Park House and from the Commerce Road site, but also with Councillor Unsa Chowdhury. Met with people from Granwood Court. It's in the ward, but I didn't express an interest. Just a discussion on process.
Thank you, Councillor Luki. Any more declarations? No? Thank you. Minutes of the last meeting was held on 2nd of March. I'll take accuracy and matterizing together. So page 1 to 10. Anybody? All happy? I can sign the minutes. Ready? Yeah. Right, thank you. On to the business now. Number 5, item number 5 has been deferred. So hopefully we'll get it in the next meeting. On item 4, Hanworth Park, we had no speakers from the applicant side. So I cannot take, objector side. So I cannot take any speakers from the applicant side. But if the members have any questions for the applicants, I don't mind, you can ask the questions. If any members want to ask any question for the applicants, they're here on Hanworth Park, yeah?
That would add to the application.
Yeah, anything they can add to the application, yeah? I'm quite happy if members want to ask any questions.
Could I ask a question, please? As I understand it, there are 2 applicants. Is that correct? The council and third party.
Yeah. That's correct. Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
Can I ask the applicant a question then, please?
You can when it comes to.
Okay, so I'm jumping the gun.
I'll give you a chance. Okay. Thank you. Right. Item 4, Hanworth Park. So I think Ed has taken it, or Matthew, you taken it? Go on then. It's all yours.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matthew Rees. I'm the Head of Development Management. So the first application is at Hanworth Park House on Forest Road. There's a couple of procedural things I have to fill you in with, if that's okay, before I give the actual presentation proper. And first of all, just to stray that this is a part full application, a part outline application. So the method of submission is that they've given us full detailed plans of Hanworth Park House itself, what it will look like, what it will contain. The housing element of the scheme is in an outline format. So essentially what I will show you today is a broad outline of what the housing would look like. So we've got parameter plans, we've got a design code, but you're not making a specific decision on what it looks like tonight. You're making a decision on the outline application and the principle of it. So as I say, I'm going to broadly outline it, but you'll find some information is lacking on its appearance and the content of these buildings that I'm going to show you. That's the reason why it's the procedural thing. They reserve certain matters for a later stage, so there'll be subsequent applications that deal with more issues in terms of design and landscaping. And then second of all, as Councillor Todd has pointed out, there are two applicants here. So there is the developer and our own housing team. So our own housing team have put in part of this application, which is for the affordable homes, and the developer has put in the application for private market homes, which would go to fund the house itself, which I'll obviously come on to. Slightly unusual situation, yeah, where we don't have speakers against the application, and because there's no speakers against it, that means that people can't speak for it, although I know that people would want to do so. So as the chair said, there's people who can answer questions. So I believe both applicants are here tonight. You've also got myself, obviously, Kieran, and we've got Sean from our own conservation team as well, who'll be happy to answer conservation questions as well. So we're all available for questions tonight. I'll move on to the presentation. Hopefully most of you know where Hanworth Park House is. It's obviously in Hanworth Park, which is within Hanworth Park Conservation Area. It is also green belt, which is going to be an important part of your consideration tonight. The application is to restore Hanworth Park House, which, as you will see from the photos, and I think you will be aware, it's in a particularly poor state of repair. It's on the Historic England at-risk register, and I think that the case is being made that this is one of the last chances for the preservation and restoration of the house itself. That has to be restored with community uses put in there. So there's an education centre, museum, an event space, artist studios, together with a living caretaker. And then as part of this proposal, there is 300 new homes proposed. So that is 120 social rent, as I say, that's the council side of things, and 180 private units, which go to fund the restoration of the house. I'll flick through the slides. The slide in front of you now is basically the outline of the application site in Hanworth Park House. That's broadly aligned east to west, slightly off kilter, but that gives you an idea of what the actual site itself is. And then, so this is an aerial view of the site. To give you an idea, so you will note a lot of trees there, which will come up later in this presentation as well. And then we've got a few pictures of what the house looks like at the moment in its current condition, or its recent condition anyway. So you'll just see it's in a poor state of repair. It's obviously deteriorated over time. That's the front elevation, and then the south wing of the building, the south wing of the clock tower, the north elevation, and the north wing. And then some internal views of the house. So those are the front rooms without floors, the ex-ballroom, which is obviously suffering as well, first floor rooms, and one of the corridors. So it gives you a fair idea of what it's looking at the moment and what problems they are currently facing with this. And then you've got the formal garden just to the eastern side of the building itself. Now we're moving on to photos from Hanworth Park itself. So one distant view looking back towards the trees. Hanworth Park House is amongst those trees as you're looking at them. A view looking from east, from the western side of Hanworth Park House, so that's the approach road, and then looking up towards the clock tower again, so you'll see the trees in the background there as well. There are extant permissions on the site. So in 1997, there was a nursing home approved on the site. Subsequent to that, there was this permission, a hotel permission and another hotel permission in 2003 and 2018, respectively, but none were brought forward. And then a withdrawn housing scheme in 2017, but I'll skip on to what it looks like at the moment. So what you're looking at the moment is an illustrative master plan. It's one of the most detailed plans you'll get as part of this. So you'll see Hanworth Park House obviously in the middle, which has been renovated. To the east of that is an open lawn area. The private units are to the east and immediately to the southeast of Hanworth Park House, and then to the southwest are the affordable homes. So I will talk a little bit more about the parameter plans because we have some visuals here which broadly show you what it's going to look like. So that's looking back towards Hanworth Park House across that open lawn area to the east. Sorry, looking from the east back west, and then just some broad parameters of what it would look like in 3D modules. And then we're going out onto the park, and what we've got are some fairly basic views of what it should look like if, when it comes forward as part of these parameter plans from within the park itself. So you're basically seeing some visuals of it peeking over the trees in the background, and there you are. So the views are basically marked. I'm not sure if that shows up particularly well, but this is a view from the southwest corner of the park looking back towards the buildings. And then there's a tree retention and removal plan. I'm not sure how helpful that is for you, but I'm going to cover that as part of the presentation as well. So the design code parameter plans tell us, it shows us where the plots are. So you're broadly looking at where the plots will be. Then it shows us where the landscaping is going to be. It gives us a massing and height study, so it's going to be up to 5 stories broadly of the mass that you see within the 3D models there. It tells us about the density at the same time. So whereas you don't have specific details of exactly what's proposed, we've got comfort as to what it will generally look like, and it's policy compliant broadly in terms of the new units that are being proposed. I will speak to the objections very quick. Well, not very quickly. I'll speak to the objections because there were 123 letters of rejection received, including some that you've received from residents recently. Basically, what you'd expect: people concerned about the encroachment of housing into the green belt, loss of public lands, the setting of the listed building, suggesting the buildings are too tall or of poor design, and then a lot of talk of planning balance, which is going to be very important tonight. And at this point, I'll just speak to the issues as we're coming in from an officer's perspective. So obviously, there's the heritage issues. So we're looking at whether or not we're causing harm to the 2 heritage assets here, which is Hanworth Park House and the conservation area in general. And the view that you're being presented with, as you'll be aware, is that we believe in terms of heritage, Hanworth Park House is obviously being restored. So there's a lot of heritage benefits attached to this scheme. The impact on the wider conservation area we're suggesting there's not significant harms to the conservation area on the basis that Hanworth Park House is obviously being restored and it's shielded from public realm, and there's not a huge degree of harm to the basis for the conservation area and its setting. The other big issue is obviously greenbelt. So generally, of course, policies don't allow development in greenbelt, and that's obviously embedded within the National Planning Policy Framework and all other policy documents below it. So what it suggests is that where you are proposing something that is deemed otherwise inappropriate within greenbelt, very special circumstances have to be demonstrated to allow the scheme. So what members are being asked of tonight is to agree as to whether or not very special circumstances exist for this encroachment into greenbelt land, which, as I say, would otherwise be not acceptable. And you're probably aware of what the positives of the scheme are. So you get a restored house, which is obviously the most important part of the scheme, the restored listed building, which otherwise is likely to fall into disrepair. You get the community use within the house. The scheme also comes forward with more accessibility into the wooded area, the nature trails, walkways. You get the affordable homes, you get the additional homes, and then you lose trees, but you will get a net gain of trees on the site. I think, sorry, just over 300 lost and 600 planted in its place. And then, yeah, so essentially we're asking members to balance that, the positives against the negatives. And again, hopefully the negatives are relatively straightforward, as I've suggested in the objection letters. So that's primarily the encroachment into greenbelt, loss of greenbelt lands, but some may deem the design to be unacceptable in the conservation area. The loss of the openness is perhaps an issue. The loss of established trees is perhaps an issue. That's essentially what members are going to have to take a view on tonight. So if it's okay, I'll pause the presentation at that point and leave it open to questions.
Thank you, Matthew. Okay, questions for Matthew, please. Councillor Lal.
Chair, a simple one, straightforward. Regarding the state of the house, quite clearly, the council doesn't have the resources to put it right, and this is sort of looks like an enabling development. In that sense, what other options have been looked at prior to this?
So first of all, you've used the word enabling development. This is not enabling development that's in front of us tonight. Sorry to be pedantic about this particular issue. It does not, enabling development is strictly the minimum form of development required to restore a historic building. Because there's an affordable housing element as part of this proposal, it does not qualify as strictly within what enabling development is. But if you were to stretch the definition, if you were to take it outside the scope of me being pedantic in a planning fashion, yes, it's obviously it's development. Money from the market housing is to go towards the restoration of the house. In which case, can I defer the question about what steps have been made up to this point, Sean, to yourself? Is that okay?
Excuse me. Yeah, this isn't the first attempt to bring the house back into repair. So there's been, as you saw from the presentation, there's been various discussions about hotels, other schemes, other processes such as this. So that's been going on really in some form or another since the care home closed back in the 90s. So that's basically what's been happening, and they're the main options that we looked at.
Okay, Councillor,
Chair, if I may,
you go.
any national funding schemes, heritage schemes, etc., applying for funding?
There are no funds available from Historic England. They've been heavily involved in the process really from day one. And whilst sites such as Gunnersbury have received some funds, this site wouldn't sit in under the criteria for allocation of any funds from Historic England. And because of the commercial element, they wouldn't get Heritage Lottery funding either. So they would be the two main sources of funding, and it's not eligible for either of those.
Okay, Councillor Rees, Williams.
Well, it was a follow-up directly on that, which is in what areas does this fall short of the criteria for Heritage England funding? I'm just curious as to
It's
why
not
this
so
doesn't
much that it falls
qualify.
short, it's that they do not have money. They are in the same position as any local authority or any other sort of public body in the last few years. Their funding is stretched to the limit. They probably wouldn't even be able to give us the money they've given us for Gunnersbury and Boston Manor now. So they would dearly love to give us some funds, but unfortunately they just do not have them at the moment.
Okay, Councillor Broad.
Yeah, I'm surprised when you say that. We're giving away hundreds of thousands our environment fund. Why aren't they suitable? Why isn't the lottery money suitable?
The Heritage Lottery Fund will not allocate funds if they think there's if it's not wholly publicly funded and accessible. So the fact that it's a private development, it's not, and the community facilities, whilst it's a great part of it, it wouldn't fit their criteria. Plus the fact that there is an incredible amount of competition, so it's far from certain they would get anywhere near the 13-14 million that would be needed to do this.
But this council's done exceptionally well. All the major houses it owns, it's got fantastic grants. Ella, let's move on. Not for your comment. Yeah, I'm fascinated that someone's decided that this putting hundreds of houses on 5-star green belt is basically okay. Who made the decision in Hounslow to say that they come to this meeting and say it's not harmful?
Okay, so I'm going to give the question. This is the application that's put in front of development management officers, and we've come to that. Is that the question you're asking? Because hopefully we've covered that broadly in the report.
A fair answer. It's a cheeky question, I know. One more, yeah? Please. Page 27, we go out to statutory consultees, people who know their job, the big boys, the GLA, and they all say they're not happy with it. So why are you out on a limb? Is this almost a commercial venture? I'm not quite sure.
So the GLA stage 1 response does ask for some additional information. It's not unusual for them to raise some issues at a stage 1 level, and then we seek to address it through the application process. We believe we have made some steps to do so. I'm not sure if I can 100% agree that they all object to it per se. I think they all feel obliged to raise the issue that you're building homes in the green belt, perhaps obliging us to make sure it's a robust way that we're going about this and ensuring that all other options have been pursued before we get to that point.
Can I interrupt you? Page 28, Historical England, no ambiguity there. Serious concerns.
Yes, they have serious concerns, as they have a very purist position, which they will take. But I can tell you, having spoken and in dealing with them for this long time, they do also support the principle of the scheme, and they certainly would welcome this coming forward.
Thank you. Councillor Stouter, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just coming back to the house, it's grade 2, it's not a grade 1. And page 47 is quite clear that the house is, and we've seen the pictures, in a fairly perilous condition. And it says in the report, which is likely to deteriorate worse to the point where we reach, where it becomes uneconomical to restore. Is there any obligation? Is there any requirement for us to do anything about it? And at what point, who decides it's uneconomical? And if the thing just falls down, or as it suggests in the report, that it becomes subject to vandalism and arson, therefore, so what?
We would have an obligation as a local authority if the building was to continue to deteriorate, to consider some form of enforcement action, whether that be urgent works notice, repairs notice. Ultimately, you could be talking compulsory purchase order if you wanted to go down that route. But in terms of, sorry, what was the other part of your question? It was,
well, basically, you've answered part of it. The council at some point may have to step in to stop the thing falling down, or if it's vandalised even further.
Yeah.
And for every year that goes by, that price increases clearly, to the point where someone's going to have to spend an awful lot of money. Or is there the option where we just do nothing, the thing falls down and we walk away?
There is that option. That's perfectly viable option. It may be, well, that you consider the cons outweigh the pros of the scheme. So that would be a perfectly valid decision to make, should you so wish. I can tell you that since I've been dealing with this in a very specific way, so starting in 2017, the cost of the restoration has gone from something like 7 million to something like 13 or 14. So that gives you an idea about how things, and bearing in mind the building costs are going up as we speak. So I understand from discussions I've had with the applicant recently, or the owner, were this not to be successful, then there would be two forms of work that we would need to do immediately to preserve the rots, as it were, which is just to stabilise some of the roof joists and replace some of the roof joists, and also to replace the canopy at the front, the metal frame. But that would only stop it probably falling down in the short term. Beyond that, it wouldn't survive much longer. And if we were to come back with another scheme, say in another 7 years, you would have expected the cost to be higher than the 14 million it is now.
So that effectively, it's not quite a fait accompli, but unless someone is allowed to generate some money from this site, it is extremely unlikely that anyone's got the pockets, which are either deep enough or generous enough, to restore this building. Am I summarising that correctly?
You would need someone with the sort of philanthropy of the Gettys or something to want to really come in and step forward. If you're talking about in order for your average businessman, if you like, to be interested in this, in order for it to be successful, successfully restored and sustainably restored, you would need to have some sort of development around the building in order to fund it.
John, on top of that, some of the councillors went to see the building. Councillor William was with me. It's in a really, really bad. We were not even allowed to go in there. It's that bad. It's dangerous. Sorry. Councillor Todd, can I come back to you? Councillor Bhatti first, please. Are you sure? Okay. Councillor Todd.
Yeah, I want to go back to the financial viability, Chair. And I'm looking at page 77. It says there that the applicant has identified a conservation deficit of 14.8 million. Now, I understand, just to clarify, the definition of the conservation deficit is the value of, it's the sum in excess of the value of the property. So it's even higher. Secondly, and more worrying to me, is paragraph 9270 talking about costing. Full costings are currently unknown. And it talks about current volatility in the market, construction material costs. This really is a flyer. How can you reassure us that this scheme has got credibility, giving in those huge caveats?
Thanks to Councillor. Yeah, we don't mind admitting this is one of the issues with getting the application in front of you tonight. It's a very, the goalposts keep moving in terms of building costs and property values and such. That's just the market as it is at the moment. It's very volatile. What we have focused on is ensuring that shortfall you just identified, the 14+ million pounds, is secured, and that'll be secured. This development will deliver that. Thereafter, this obviously can't be a profit-making venture in terms of build houses in the greenbelt. You get to take away whatever access you have. So we'll be looking to secure as part of some kind of binding agreement if property values go up in due course, a late-stage review mechanism. So there'll be review mechanisms built into the Section 106 agreement where any excess, were that to be the case, will then go into Hanworth Park House itself. So what we're proposing to you today is like the vanilla scheme, as Sean's put it to me. It's what would be required to have it restored and functioning. There are obviously benefits to the wider community, to the house itself, to have the sprinkles on top, as it were, which could be done through this late stage review mechanism. So that's currently what it's proposing, and that will obviously have quite a complicated Section 106 agreement attached to it.
Okay, I'll come back to you. Hold on. Councillor Bhatti, you still have a question? No. Tony, Councillor Luki.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think I might be the only one, and perhaps Councillor Todd, who's watched this over the years, since we've been on the planning committee, the only ones here, and it's been a bit. It has appeared fly over that time, but yeah, we've got what we've got in front of us. What I want assurances. I want you to assure us, everyone, that there'll be no building of flats or houses until the house is restored. Is that why we've got an outline planning application for flats? This won't be. The house will be repaired, fixed before any housing is built. That's how I read this. That's how I read this report. And also, if the owner of the house, because this is a privately owned house, if the owner of this house does not repair it in time, and should the worst happen and it collapses or falls down and it becomes disrepairable, then there is no scheme therefore to build flats. That will go by the wayside, because you can't build flats on Greenbelt if there is nothing to fund if there's no house to fund. Is that right?
Yes, so I think that's probably fair to say that built into the Section 106 agreement will be that you need to be assured that you can do the works are possible, plausible, something like that, before they go ahead and do the housing development. You just asked me the question is whether we can guarantee that the works take place before the flats come forward. That's what's been proposed to us, but I don't think we can guarantee it to that point. It may well be the case that we would have to have kind of a hand-in-hand Section 106 agreements with very tight thresholds. It would be obviously positive to have it all done and then you start the housing, but it might be more practical to have a situation if they need the funding from selling the houses that you get to certain thresholds and it will move hand in hand as you move through the process of funding is provided, restored. That might well be the way that we'd have to go through the process.
Sure. Then what's the guarantee? You build a little bit of the house, you restore a little bit of the house, then you start building the development, and then you get which part of the development would go first? Would it be the social housing side of it, or will it be the private housing side of it, which will trigger the next phase of the restoration of the house?
So the social housing side of it is slightly separate to this situation because it isn't that there's nothing there going towards the funding of the house, and obviously it's our own scheme coming forward. So it's within our gift as to how and when that comes forward. But again, that'll be within the Section 106 agreement. I can offer you assurances it will be secured. We don't have the detailing of the Section 106 agreement until we know exactly what situation it is when the Section 106 agreement is signed. But this isn't perhaps an unusual Section 1, well, slightly unusual for us, but very broadly, enabling development is a thing that you deal with in terms of Section 106 agreement. You can ensure that money is ring fenced to go towards it, and you can set up a panel who can draw up a strategy as to how the funding goes to and when, and that can include us.
One more on this. It's how this house could be managed or would be managed, because one of the things that I think a pre-planning meeting that we had a few years back, about 5 years back, prior to a scheme that was withdrawn, we did recommend, some of the councillors there at the time did recommend the setting up of the trust, doing it formally, and I introduced them to a few people, to Gunnersbury, to Osterley, to Chiswick House. How would we, what body do we have to oversee this, to manage this? What trust form? And I notice a community interest company is included in this report. But how do we how do we guarantee that that is kind of independent in many ways? Because it would rely on the owner to seed fund it. And I'll read in there that it'd only be for the minimum of 20, at least 20 years. And that, how can we guarantee that this is going to last longer than 20 years? Because I have a fear that this will perhaps drag on the redevelopment of the house and the building of and the triggers that will allow for the building of the other units, whether they're private or whether they're social housing.
This is probably going to be slightly long-winded, so I apologise. There's two elements to your answer. So how will the house be sustainable in terms of essentially Hanworth Park House will remain in private ownership, but on completion of the house, the private development will be transferred to a bankruptcy remote single asset investment company or trust along with funds. The owner's company will then also make a gift to the trust for each apartment sold to further underpin the financial stability. So he will also make separate commitments to maintain and step in should the second part of the trust, which I'll come to in a minute, through the friends probably, come forward. So all of that would be at least part of that would be secured through a conservation management plan, through a 106, and also through separate documents that sit outside the planning system, such as a service level agreement between Mr. Cottle and the Friends of Hanworth Park House, or whoever else decides to take it on. In terms of the friends themselves, myself and Emily in Community Partnerships, we've been working with them for some time, and they have had discussions with Gunnersbury, but they have had even more fruitful discussions with Reach Academy, who would be a partner helping them run the site. They are at present have a very good, clear, fit for purpose plan to run the site as a community facility. Yes, it could go wrong in 20 years' time, but anything could. But we're sort of very confident that they are at a position where they go in a very good position to run this and give it the best chance of success.
Okay, Councillor Williams. Now have you got supplementary?
Just one more. Where are the triggers? Where in this £40 million shortfall, conservation shortfall that's written in the report, where would the triggers be? Where do you envisage, as the professionals working with the applicants, where would you see the triggers? I've heard roof joists mentioned. But where, and we did go that day that we missed each other that day, because I took the long way round when I drove there. But we were allowed into the house, and we did see his. Okay, all right, and we went inside. We bumped in, yeah. And we've done it before anyway. We've been there at various open days. We've been there inside. Where would and we see that there are. You can see up 3 floors. You can see the roof from the ground floor. Where would the triggers be? Have you worked that one out, or what goes first? Where the phases will be here. I'm concerned that there's they will fix the roof joists, fix the roof, build houses, and then that's about it really. And then they could walk away or sell on the rights to develop.
There's a comprehensive repair plan. there also will be set again. It sits outside the planning process, but there will be a repairs board set up with various people on it. In terms of how you essentially prevent, in as much as you can prevent someone doing something and then walking away, it would be a similar principle to when you have affordable housing and you have a trigger about X number of units or however number of units blocked. You relate that to some of the work. Probably would be the roof joist and the canopy in this instance, because they're the most urgent bits. So it would be, we have had some discussions about that, but it's certainly got to be finalised. But it's whether you do a basic shell and core fit out first, and then you do a further, so category A and category B, where you take further fittings. So in as much as you can ever be certain that you will guarantee it, with there would be similar triggers, as I said, that you've probably used on many of the applications you've approved, but in the same sense as affordable housing.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Hi, thank you. So I've understood that it will be paid for by the private owner, and there's an element of profit that will be taken out because it's part of the incentive to build it, to repair the house. I'm just wondering what the margin of that is. And the second one is, I've also understood that if it comes in under the cost of what it will take to repair, we've got a clawback to make sure that some money goes back into the house. What happens if it's the other way around? What if it ends up costing more than the 14 million? Is it just expected to come out of the developer's profit? Have we set the parameters of the housing at the maximum level we think it would have to go to be viable at a higher level, or is there a possibility they come back and try and put more levels on? I guess that's the question.
So the developer's profit, I don't have confirmed in front of me. Generally it's 17%. The higher risk of development, it goes up. So sorry, I don't have that confirmed tonight. But in terms of so the way clawback mechanisms work is they work in our favour generally. So it doesn't. Yeah, same as affordable housing. It doesn't go both ways. So if you do a late stage review mechanism for affordable housing and it turns out that there's a bigger shortfall than we predicted, we don't give them affordable housing back. So it would be the same as this. It always works to our favour. So yes, we would be securing that £14 million.
So the parameter of the buildings wouldn't change. They could build what they could build, and they can take whatever profit they can take out of that. I guess if it reaches a point where they can't make any profit at all, we're then at another risk point, aren't we? But okay.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing we've got to consider at the moment is build costs are rising very rapidly. We are fully aware that, I think, as input in the documentation, difficult decisions may have to be made. So it may well be that rise in profit is actually eaten up by build costs and having to, in order to get the level of restoration that we want. So I think the way things are going, I think it's highly likely that's what will happen.
Okay, Councillor Lal, have you got a question?
Chair, yeah. On the same vein, ideally it will be better for all and sundry that the house itself is restored before anything happens. And I'm still unsure whether officers will be able to hold the developer to account to make sure things happen on time and it doesn't drag on. However, you did say earlier on that it's not an enabling development as such. Okay, fine. But technically, I see it as some sort of an exceptional circumstances for the redevelopment of the house to take place, and hence the incursion into greenbelt land. Now, the other aspect, I'm sure it's in the report somewhere, just so that it gets a proper airing. The officer mentioned briefly about community uses. Can you elaborate on that as to what the benefits to the residents of London Borough and Hounslow would be?
I mean, it may well be best to ask Richard to speak, who's actually from the Friends, but I mean, it will be a range of facilities. It's important. It's impossible to say exactly what the curriculum, if you like, would be now. But it could be something like art classes, cooking. They've had motor shows there, all sorts, and very successful events that they've got a track record now of doing. So, it would be open to the general community as well. It wouldn't be sort of restricted to those who live in the developments as well. So it would be taking an area that at the moment is not publicly accessible, and making it accessible and with community uses that likely the Friends of Hanworth Park House would be as a trust or a charity would be running.
Right. Any more questions for Matthew? No? Okay. Members, if they want to ask any question, applicant is here. So you got a chance there now? Nothing? Right. You have? Go on.
Sorry, I've realised because there's no speakers, we're almost, yeah, it's questions and then debate. So I do have a question. It's sort of obviously a large part of the balance we have to weigh up is the harm to the open space and to the green space around it. I'm just wondering, for the benefit of everyone here and listening, what are the wider environmental benefits that will be delivered through this? I remember we had some talk of the river being unculverted, for example, and I'm aware that the trees go up, but I just would like some sort of reassurance and to the satisfaction of the committee that we are going to get, for the loss of the space in the park, we will get a better park and a greener park and a better biodiversity, etc. I wonder if you could talk to that for a minute, because I'd be welcome to understand it.
Sure, thank you, Councillor. So you didn't speak of sustainability, but it's obviously a very environmentally friendly scheme in general. Hopefully we've covered that within the report. Biodiversity net gain, sorry, this is going to come up in planning more and more. There is a significant increase in biodiversity as well as this scheme. They're meant to give us 10%, it's 35%. Maybe I'll just talk about trees. So 314 trees lost, 628 new trees provided is the headline figure. So that's a significant increase in number of trees provided. There would be the opening up of this area, so there would be walkways through the wildlife here. An ecology assessment has been undertaken. No significant issues raised in terms of ecology. Some bats were identified on the site. There's precautions input in there into lighting levels to ensure that bats aren't harmed as part of this overall scheme. So it is, if you remove it from the fact that it's within Greenbelt, the environmental credentials compared to what our policies require are actually very good. So biodiversity net gain is good. The urban greening factor is good. You get lots of new trees to replace the trees that get replaced, and it's an environmentally friendly scheme. So obviously we're putting that now into the planning balance and the very special circumstances case, but in terms of how it contributes to that weighs quite heavily in favour of the application.
Okay. I can't see any more hands. So Matthew, you want to elaborate a bit more or come back to if there's any more questions? Are you? Yeah. So I'll open it for debate. Yeah, Councillor Luki.
Just a couple of things that struck me when I was going around, when I went round Hanworth Park House with Councillor Bowring and the case officer, Mr. Nash, was that there's a load of there's a load of traditional skills that don't exist, that do exist, but not enough of them. And we did discuss a potential of getting a condition in there. I know there's training, building training in there that could form part of the section 106. But should this get the go ahead, I'd like to see, and I think probably many other people around here would like to see, because it is a big job, to see some traditional trades employed, or people trained up in traditional trades to work on the house. Plenty of plaster work that's fallen down, plenty of internal stucco, plenty of cornicing and all that stuff, whether it's in wood or plaster or similar. That doesn't appear in the any of the conditions. If we are going to debate as well, I still have my concerns that for 8 years, very little has been done apart from some PR on the part of the developer, the owner. I'd really like, and I think my colleagues, I would like to impress upon my colleagues here that we are quite tight and strict on the phasing of this and the repair of the house. And we don't give away our trump cards, if you like, on the house to the benefit of the developer who's always wanted to build on this bit of green belt. We want to see that. I would really want to see that house finished and usable. Okay, there could be further and later fittings, but every room should be useful, or potentially useful to be used. But definitely the public rooms down on the ground floor, definitely the rooms where there could be the spaces where there could be um, a possibility for income generation. For example, the cafe, the 80 covers cafe, yeah, properly fitted out to start, to start work from day one. Okay, there's 4 floors to this building. You could possibly work on them later on, the top ones. But I don't think what's really is it have people cottoned on that the owner will still own part of this scheme and still have access to part of this scheme, and not hand it all over to the friends of Hanworth Park House. But I'd just like to seek support from the committee that this doesn't, we don't end up with the joists, the roof joists and the canopy. We want to see we want to see all the structure fixed. Don't want to see any pigeons in there anymore, for example. And all of that should be part of that Section 106 agreement. If you can't do that now, officers, if you can't commit to that now, then I would ask either deferral or refusal on this. We've got to be honest with, we've got to be fair to the friends of Hanworth Park House as well, who have done a lot of work on this. We want them in there for them to start developing it and earning rents from it.
Thank you, Councillor Luki. Councillor Stroutup.
Yeah, just to follow up again on the point made by Councillor Luki, we've got to make sure that, sort of taking a slightly inappropriate metaphor, this just isn't a Trojan horse to get the development done. And we've all seen across London where a listed building is going to be sympathetically restored and then remarkably falls down during the restoration. One thinks of the Kensington Odeon and other places. So that there has to be some fairly solid conditions put in here that's central to any of this development is the restoration of the house. And there's a couple of throwaways in the report which says, we've got to make sure that the house is not damaged, but I mean, it's going to fall down, as we've already established, if we don't do something. Therefore, the do nothing option is the house falls down. We've heard it's going to have, if sympathetically done and properly managed, a good community use and could be used to great effect. The other elephant floating around, of course, is the incursion onto the green belt. So I suggest as a committee, what we have to be absolutely certain of is that we're going to protect this house. It will be sympathetically restored. It will be made a community asset, as we've been promised. And we have some strict measures in place to make sure that we're not sacrificing a small amount of green belt, which the report outlines the conditions, and we could do that. For a half-baked restoration. So I'm edging towards yes, but I want some fairly firm reassurances that this restoration will be properly and sympathetically done and will deliver in terms of what not just the community around it, but the wider community would like to see.
Thank you, John. Yeah, Councillor Todd.
Yeah, thanks very much. I have serious reservations about this scheme, and a lot of it's to do with the actual owner. I went there some time ago. I've been back to a few of the exhibitions or events they have on the site. I have every respect for the friends. They're doing a very difficult job very well. But the owner is the vandal here. He's done virtually nothing over the years. I went there and I felt like crying to see wonderful wallpaper in the ballroom just falling apart. The building was falling down as I looked at it. And here he is, he's played a spectacular game of poker where he hopes to get £14 million to make up the deficit and carry on. We're making very romantic assumptions. The only thing I've heard tonight is from our conservation officer, the bottom line, if it goes by side, it falls down on us, the council. And I find that unacceptable. it's rather strange to have a scheme of such magnitude where the officer's report talks of a business plan and a viability report. Well, we don't see it. So how can those of us who have a scintilla of business acumen, probe other than just having general figures of £14 million? Okay, that's my view. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Todd. Any more contributions or anybody? Yeah, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, I accept that the very nature of special circumstances and building on the greenbelt is we have to accept there is harm involved in this. That is inevitably a part of that, and the question is whether the benefits outweigh it. I think it's obviously very clear that the house is in the last chance saloon, and I'm not as close to the history as Tony and John are, but annoyingly, we are where we are. Seems to be where we've got to with this, and this may be the last chance to stop it falling down. I think we have to take a view about whether saving this building, is a benefit that justifies the works proposed. I personally do think that the benefits that come with it to enable it to pay for it provide their own benefits. Housing does provide a benefit of itself. I also think that there are benefits to the wider park in terms of, I was very struck when we went down there. You wouldn't know the house was there. You wouldn't necessarily even know there was a park at that particular point. It's pretty overgrown. It doesn't look very accessible. It doesn't look very inviting. I wouldn't necessarily, if I'd been just walking around there, have realized that there was a big open green space there to use as a member of the public. And I think that opportunity to bring it back into use and actually create an attractive opening that brings people into the park and delivers the wider benefits, the wider walking and cycling connections, and creates activity, public uses there are benefits that I would say potentially make it a better park, which I think would for me make the benefits outweigh the harm on this. I accept that we don't have all the information we would necessarily like. The fact that there's an outline application means we don't have some of the detail we would like, and I very much hear what councillors Todd and Lucia are saying. But we are where we are, and if the choice is let the house fall down or save it, I'm very much of the mind that we should save it. And
are you proposing something?
I'm happy to propose approval.
Okay. With any conditions?
With all of the conditions that were there, obviously, but I don't know if anyone has any other conditions they'd like to suggest, but I'm happy to recommend approval.
Yeah. Okay, have we got a seconder for that? Okay, we have seconder. Yes, Tony, you want to say something quickly?
I have no difficulty with this. I have no difficulty with that. But I'm really scared. I'm really scared that the guarantees won't be there. I'm really scared that we could possibly lay on our backs and have our tummies tickled.
But Tony, it's been.
Yeah, I know. So, but therefore I'm perhaps arguing against unless we can get some assurances.
But you've done it already. You've spoken already. It's been proposed and seconded now.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a vote.
Oh, you're going to take a vote without a debate? Okay,
well,
fine.
Debate has been done. Tony, you have given chance. There was a debate before it's been proposed.
Okay, all right. I'll take that.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, thank you. So we'll take a vote for the proposal. It's been proposed and seconded. So in favor of the application, can we have the hands up, please? Yep. Okay. Against? Abstentions? So it's been approved with all the conditions, yeah? And now we'll take a break, 10 minutes break. Right, members, are we all here? Who's missing? Can you have a look, please?
Councillor Boss, Councillor
Ghazala, John.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
We just missed.
Right. Gary. Thank you. And we all, I think, have fast spoken now, yes? All right. Okay. Same planning application we have taken a decision on the first one. The second one is on listed proposal. We have to take a decision on that as well. Anybody? Yeah,
Is this part two of the same thing?
part of the same thing, yeah.
Yeah, recommend approval.
Yeah. Anybody seconding that? Okay, we'll take a vote on that. Yeah. Listed building. Second part of the same application. Okay, you want to? Okay, Matthew, is he here? No, you are. Okay, sorry.
Still in the loo, I think.
Yes, we
So
might.
the second part of the application is the listed building consent for the restoration of the house. So the first vote was on the wider development, the hybrid application for the restoration of the house and the outline consent for the residential development. The second part is the listed building consent, which is a separate consent for the works to the listed building.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, thanks. I'm not trying to be difficult. Yeah. So given it's already listed and you're not the authority for listing, what are we recommending to a third party that we go ahead or what?
No, it says it. So the application for listed building consent is made to the local planning authority. Yeah.
Right. A vote for the proposal. Yeah. Anybody against? Abstentions? No, okay. One abstention, yeah. Thank you, it's approved. Right. The next item is item 6, which is 20 The Grove, Isleworth. Pages 237 to 262. And who's taking it? So, yeah, go on.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. My name is Sophie Middleton. I'm one of the planning officers in the development management team. So the application site here is a 3-storey detached block, which currently contains 15 flats. It's located on the junction of Eversley Crescent and the Grove in the Spring Grove Conservation Area. The first set of site photos shows the site as viewed from the Grove and Eversley Crescent. And then the second set of photos on here shows the western boundary of the site, including the existing vehicular access from Eversley Crescent, which will be unaffected by the proposed development, and the relationship with the fairways to the west of the site. And the final set of photos that we have shows the relationship between the property and Wyndham Lodge on the northern boundary of the site. The proposal being considered under this application is for the erection of 5 additional flats in an additional story. The 5 flats will be accessed through the 3 existing stair cords, and each will have access to private amenity space in the form of roof terraces. 23 objections were received in relation to this application. These mainly focused on highways implications of the development, the visual impact on the neighbours' living conditions, and the neighbouring concerns relating to the freehold of the property are not material planning considerations. Later objections drew attention to the 3D visuals and the scheme. While these remain a tool at the disposal of planning officers and members, like all 3D visuals, they should be approached with caution. And I do note now that there was a slight error in the 3D visuals, which shows a slightly protruding element to the existing building, which does not exist. The provision of an increased amount of housing on this site is considered acceptable in this location, which is an existing site and established residential use. The proposed development will be net zero and include air source heat pumps and solar panels. The additional story will be set back from the main building line, with the exception of the stair courts. It will be clad to appear visually different from the existing building, whilst remaining in keeping with the surrounding area. Through drawing the visual cues from the host building, the extension will appear appropriately subservient and subordinate to existing, responding positively to the character of the host property and wider conservation area. Wyndham House, the nearest neighbour, is set back from the existing building and therefore would not be affected by any overshadowing which may occur. The proposed windows largely affect the positioning of existing windows in the building, and it's not considered that there'll be additional overlooking through to the neighbouring properties. The proposed development will provide a high standard of accommodation. Internal floor areas would exceed nationally described space standards, and each unit will be provided with private amenity specs well in excess of policy requirements. The proposed development would not include any additional on-site parking, and residents would be restricted from accessing parking permits on surrounding streets via condition. The proposal will provide for 16 cycle parking spaces, seeking to promote active and sustainable travel, and the council's transport team raised no objections to the proposed development. There is a number of TPO trees on site which will be secured, and the protection of these will be secured by condition. To see details of this prior to construction. The application has also been accompanied by adequate fire safety information. On the basis of the above, the proposal is subject to approval, subject to the conditions set out in the report.
Thank you, Sophie. Questions for Sophie, members? Very lucky, Sophie. Oh, Councillor William, go on.
So there's lots of questions. I've got to answer just a quick. Am I right looking at that previous image that with the added level on top, it's still below the height of the building immediately to the, what is that, the east? The north. And then that one on the left is the nearest other property.
Yeah, so the total height of the building once would be 11 point, just double check I have got it in my report. 11.1 meters, so yeah, it wouldn't be taller than Wyndham Lodge to the north of the site.
I think we had, sorry, another question. I think we had comments about the new appearance of the stairwells and the cladding of that. So, I mean, we've recently had a similar application in my ward, and the building was being reclad as a result of the extra levels going on. Is that what's happening here?
No, so there's no changes to the external appearance of the existing building. I think the drawing is just kind of simplifying the materials. Just like as I said before, the 3D visual is just kind of a tool to assist us in addition to the 2D plans, which show the development kind of in full.
But so are there or are there not any changes to the stair cores?
There's no changes to the stair cores. Just the stair core, unlike the rest of the additional story, would not be set back from the proposed as shown on the plans.
Not already.
So no, the only change to the stair core is they're just bringing it up an extra floor. At the ground first and second floor level, there's no changes to the building at all. There's no change to propose. And we're getting a little bit confused because the 3D visual does actually show changes to it, what's there existing. That's not being proposed in front of you tonight. Sorry.
Thank you.
I think that's why we were all confused. Councillor Todos, I think that needed to clarify.
Okay, Councillor Williams, thank you. Councillor Bhatti, your question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can we go back to picture one that you showed, please? One before that. Where the building, that's, no, not this one. The one I see on page 239, the house.
That wasn't in the presentation here, sorry.
Okay.
But we've got the report in front of us, so by all means ask questions on
The
that basis.
question is that the height of this roof is higher than this, although it's 11.1, as you say. Yeah?
That's correct, yes.
And the staircase, is that already there, or that's just the proposed thing?
So everything that you see above the second floor level is new.
It's new,
Yeah.
right. So looking at this roof style here or design would be much better than just flat sort of type of thing. My thought on that.
So there is other examples of this flat roof style of development within the surrounding area, not next door, but that kind of like south, but one, there was another example, Grovewood Court, which is a 4-story flat roof building in a very similar style to the application site, which is where the precedent for this proposal kind of is seeking to kind of replicate that design rather than necessarily the pitch roof design, which is a bit more common in the more modern buildings, rather than kind of like this interwar style of architecture, which is kind of the building this is seeking to follow.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Luki.
Well, this isn't an interwar building. This is a late 60s, early 70s building here. Grovewood Court. Earlier on, you said the extension wouldn't be visually different, but it is. It's a white stucco on top of bricks. So yeah, why are we getting that description? And whilst it might not be as tall as Wyndham Court next door, is it taller than other neighbouring buildings, such as the fairways behind and number 53 Eversley Crescent to the west?
So it would be taller than the fairways because that's currently a 3-story building, obviously with a pitched roof. So we would be adding an additional story on with the flat roof to that building. So it would be taller than that building. However, there is a considerable distance again between those two buildings, and also to the. Are you referring to the properties on the opposite side of the road of the Grove, or the property on the opposite side of Eversley Crescent?
I could refer to those as well because I forgot to refer to them. But there's I'm talking about the one number 53. It's called 53 Eversley Crescent, but it's next door to number 18, the Grove.
So yeah, the building would be taller than that building, but then obviously a bit further south along the Grove, we have the 4-story building of a similar design, which it wouldn't be taller than.
I'm a bit concerned about the depiction here with this sticky out stairwell. So you can assure us that there's no intention to stick that out in the.
Yeah, so the 3D visuals don't form part of obviously the approved plans condition. The approved plans will only be in relation to the drawings that were in the application file, so the proposed elevations which have been supplied. Not any of the 3D visuals will not be included in that approved plans list.
Sorry, Chair, and one more. And how does it configure on the inside? How will we've had a problem with a building on the Osley Road. Somebody's taken it upon themselves to try and put a new story on there. Yeah, what checks have been made on the stairwells and the access to any potential flats should this be approved?
So most of those matters you've raised are not planning considerations, and the building has in the planning statement it did include that the building was structurally safe for an additional story. However, obviously those particular regulations would be taken into consideration as part of the building regulations procedure following the grant of planning permission, rather than can be considered at this stage of the application. However, we are confident in terms of fire safety that the building would pass all the tests and the 3 separate cores, and so each of the flats will be accessed through 3 separate residential cores as is existing. I'm not sure what the rest of your question was. Sorry, would you be able to repeat that?
I can't remember.
Okay, I can't see any more hands. Yeah, Councillor Strouber.
Apologies if you did cover it, but it's just on the car parking. It's going to be managed within the side, and to ensure there's no overspill onto surrounding. Is there a residence parking scheme in force in that area?
So the roads surrounding the site are within the controlled parking zone. So future residents of the additional flats wouldn't be able to access parking permits. And then we're also securing a parking management plan via condition to ensure that there's no overspill parking on the site. So existing residents' parking would not be affected by the proposal.
So the current residents, they won't lose parking spaces, and the new residents
won't have access to parking spaces.
Won't have access to parking spaces and won't have access to a CPZ
permit. Yeah.
Permit. Okay, thank you.
Right, I can't see any more hands. Okay, can I now invite Councillor Unsa Chaudhary? Unsa, you have 5 minutes, okay? And we'll remind you when 30 seconds left.
Good evening, committee. I'm standing up because I say I stand here. Before you on the request of my residents in Austin Spring Grove Ward, residents specifically of the site in question and also along the Grove, all of whom feel they will be substantially affected by this proposal. Though indeed we must ask, what actually is the proposal? You all would have received an email from Mr. Ali Khan it was mentioned that the information presented from the applicant is incomplete, inaccurate, and misleading. Today, we've seen people on the committee who are well versed in planning feeling a bit confused by this proposal. So, you know, it makes you wonder, well, if they're feeling confused, what's the chances for the rest of us? So, yes, in Hounslow, we need housing, but not at any cost. And this committee and residents, we deserve better treatment than the applicant has given here today. Inaccurate documents tell us either A, people aren't interested, or they don't know what they're doing. While neither of these are planning matters, the question of the scheme which you're reviewing today, we need to ask, is it with or without the new stair call? We've heard from the officer saying that the stair call which was sticking out was actually not right. But committee, that's what you've seen. That's the proposals that you're looking at. Okay, fine, they're not part of the proposed plan, which we've heard, but what does that actually mean? A resident who lives on the topmost flat has raised concerns about the impact of placing a new staircase. The officer has mentioned that the staircases won't be impacting them, but at the moment, the staircases end at their flat. So where will the new staircases go? You've mentioned also about parking, that it's not going to affect residents, but residents today are affected by parking. They have designated spaces in their parking area. However, other people park there. Who's to stop these new residents from parking there? Committee, you have to think about this. The evidence that has been presented to you is not fully there. You might need some more time to think about it. So at the very least, I request that you defer the application. The addendum which we've received, it seems like the ball's trying to be pulled over our eyes again. The legal team may want to look at this and see about the images. Are they misleading? Are they able to do that? Because obviously we don't want to end up in a judicial review situation. So please, committee, make sure due process is followed, refuse the application, or at least defer it until you can see the facts, look at them properly, and take in what is actually being proposed here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chaudhary. Can you sit there, please, for a minute, if there's any questions for Councillor Chaudhary, members? Nope. Thank you. Sorry, hang on, one question. Councillor Williams.
Hi, Councillor Chowdhury. Accepting what you say about it being not brilliant that we got an incorrect image, are you satisfied that in the questions we just asked to the committee before you came up, that we have got an answer that explains pretty comprehensively what is proposed, which is a building with this, if I've understood it correctly, is it will look exactly the same as it does now. It will go on exactly the same floor plan as it has now, but it will go up an extra story.
I would argue that no, I'm not satisfied by it because it will have an impact on the area, which is a conservation area. The reason it will have an impact is, okay, it will be slightly smaller than one of the neighbouring areas. But if you look at the area as a whole, at the moment, there aren't high buildings there. So this will increase that. The officer didn't mention exactly where the staircase is going to go. So once it gets to the top of the current story,
I think it's going to continue up from there.
Yes, but where? Into the flat that's currently at the top? Because there isn't space for an additional staircase at the moment. So how is that going to work? This is what has been raised by the person who owns that flat. Similarly, residents who live opposite the proposal have said that they feel they're going to be affected by changes to the light, their right to light. So that's another consideration to take on board.
Okay.
Would you accept that the officers have said that there won't be an impact on light, which is what they've said? I don't know. I mean, I understand what your residents are telling you, but do you accept what our officers are telling us in terms of the committee?
I haven't seen what I don't know exactly what the officers have said in terms of, in the paper it does say they won't be affected, but I haven't seen the calculations behind how they've got to that decision.
Yeah, Councillor Stroud.
Yep. Before I ask a question, is it possible to put up the picture that appears on page 239, please? Do you have the? Is it? Well, it's the one that's got a rather smart white car in front of it, and that's the one, yeah. And the mountains. I think of 3D rendered view. Yeah. That's the one I'm looking for. That's the one. Just before I ask Councillor Chowdhury, can we confirm, is that picture, that's obviously a generated graphic, but is the building next to it with does that currently exist? Yeah. Yes. So the only reason I asked that, Councillor Chowdhury, is because obviously you did mention that there's possibly some distortion of the view, but it appears to be no taller and possibly slightly less, not as tall, rather, not less tall, not as tall as the neighbouring buildings. Would you accept that?
I believe the officer said it was slightly smaller than the neighbouring one, yes.
Slightly. Okay, it's just from the picture when I looked at it, it looked as though it was about either the same height or fractionally taller, but and is the width of the road a fair representation of the width of the road there and the pavements?
I don't think that's an accurate depiction, no.
Okay, so I'm just wondering about the overshadowing of neighbours opposite, because it appears to be quite a substantial distance. Okay.
Yeah, I
fine.
don't think that's an accurate depiction, though. of
Okay,
the
thank you.
area.
Just whilst we're on that one, if you can scroll up and look at figure 5, which is on page 250 of the report, please. And you've got the layout there, and there you have got the protrusion of you've got protruding entrances there on that drawing. And that's not 3D. That is drawing from the application. So we're not, again, I know we're not really being asking a question to Councillor Chowdhury, but if officers can confirm that is what's been applied for, and then that does correspond to the 3D graphic.
So that's what's being applied for. So the existing stair cores are like that. So the proposed building is set in about 1.5 metres from the edges of the original building line, with the exception of the stair cores, which will be the same as existing. So the stair cores will be clad in the same materials to match existing, therefore drawing the visual cue from the host property. So that's how the proposed development is in keeping with existing. So it draws visual cues from the existing property through the use of the stair core, whilst remaining visually different to prove that show it is an extension to the existing building.
Sorry, Chair, but what's drawn there looks like the same as what's on the 3D graphic.
The 3D graphic, if you just go back to the drawing, just to make it a bit clearer, shows a slight extension to the existing stair cores, whereas if we kind of look, so the stair cores on the 3D graphic protrude out slightly further than they do for the entire building than they do as existing.
Okay. Sorry, Chair, that doesn't help.
All right. Okay, so any more questions thank you, Councillor Chaudhary. And can I now invite objector, Jamie Sullivan, please? Mr. Sullivan, you'll have 5 minutes, and we'll remind you when 30 seconds left.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm Jamie Sullivan, planning consultant from Iceni Projects. I've been instructed to appear today on behalf of the residents of Groundwood Court. So you've covered off quite a bit of my first point around the inaccuracies of the stair core. There's more to it than that in terms of the issues here that are being slightly distorted. So if you look at the visualization below 4.5, which would match up to what's on the screen at the moment, it's not just that stair cores are being proposed that won't exist. There is also changes to the materials alongside it. So you see the white paneling next to the stair cores. Those are also shown in the visualizations as being bricked up, but that's not actually the case. The other issue here is if you look at what is existing on the site, there's actually a much more complicated palette of materials behind that stair core. If you look at that visualization, you believe you're getting a nice, clean brick facade, new brick entrance, clear glazing. That's not correct. You won't get that stair core. What you'll have is what is behind it. Now, officers are suggesting quite rightly that 3D visualizations are there to assist you, and they should be there to assist you in these instances because you're trying to decide whether or not this is appropriate in a conservation area. The problem is these visualizations do not assist you. They only mislead you. Those proposed plans and the visualizations show two very different design approaches and strategies. I wrote my representations and I had to write different comments for each different approach. If you look at what's there in terms of the visualization and the existing plans, you are talking about 50% of that visualization being incorrect. It cannot be relied upon. And I do not think that you can rely on the elevations in front of you to deliver the design quality that you should expect. And I'll turn to that one now. So as I've kind of highlighted before, the main issue here is that this design proposal has a very cluttered palette of materials. I won't list them all, but it's quite loud in terms of what is there already. And it's got a lot of different varieties of window arrangements as well. The new story adds even more mixes in terms of materials to this already quite eclectic mix. Most importantly, I would add, what will actually happen in the stair core is you'll get a new brick crown on top of the stair core, which is at odds with the rest of the building. Now, the issue with this and why it's important to highlight this is that you're being shown a more complex, a more simplified pattern of materials than is being proposed. And the problem is what's existing, which you have to piece together from looking at these existing views and elevations, is that you're going to create a very discordant feature within the street scene with all of these different materials and design approaches being mixed in. And in my view, this is a building that should be merging into the background, not being brought out into the forefront. My other concern was around this being a flat roof building in the conservation area. I kind of touched on this before. If you look at the existing building, what's on there at the moment, currently you have the roof line below the eaves line of the adjoining building. If you increase it upwards, you break that building and you make it more dominant within the street scene. And as I said, this is something we should be seeing merging back into the street scene rather than being more visible. A couple of other points, if I may, before I finish. The building forms an important view that's been identified as the council within the conservation area. This has not been assessed as part of the application. Secondly, the scheme does not provide any new communal open space for residents. It relies on what's there as existing. The issue is that this communal space is hard up against the living room
30
windows,
seconds, Speaker.
which are floor to ceiling, creates an uncomfortable arrangement. So overall, I'd say the main issue here is that there are significant issues with both design, quality and submission. And this is a scheme in a conservation area and a borough that demands high quality design, which is not being delivered by this scheme. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Questions for Mr. Sullivan? Nope. Go on.
I mentioned this earlier, Mr. Sullivan. The contrast of the proposed white extension on the roof with the brick below. Yeah, where else do we get that in the area? I mean, I know where else we get it, and but perhaps you can tell me, and I can correct you if you're wrong.
I believe there's another Art Deco building within the conservation area where it's been successfully delivered, but that is where you just have this very simplified palette of materials where it's mostly brick built, and then you get a white extension above it, which is not being proposed here. You may well correct me if there's another option.
No, that's the one. That's Thornbury Court, and even that's not really been built to spec. I've got to raise that with planning enforcement.
Thank you. Councillor Stoughton.
Yeah, thanks very much for your very comprehensive analysis. Just one question. You suggest to us that the visualization we're being shown is not what we'll get. What do you base that on? What leads you to believe that visualization is incorrect?
Well, just comparing the plans and what's there as existing. So if you look at the visualization, let's take the first one, shall we? That stair core there is not in the floor plans. One of your colleagues raised an issue with it appearing in one of the floor plans before. I'm not. I think that might be an out-of-date floor plan because I've not seen that on the proposed approved floor plans. The floor plans show what is existing for ground, first and second floor, which is the elevations remaining flush, no stair court jutting out like this. That's what's in the plans that I've seen on the application portal, and that I believe is what your office is considered to be the case as well in terms of what's being approved.
If you look at page 250, though, that unless, I mean, I'm not experienced at reading these plans, but there does look to be a fairly substantial stairwell projection there, and that, unless they're going to be overhanging, one presume that those projections will get all the way to the ground.
So you're talking about Figure 5 proposed floor plans and site layout.
Absolutely, yeah.
So your officers may be able to clarify, but when I wrote my representations, the floor plans that I looked at in terms of the ones that are proposed didn't show the stair cores jutting out in that way, and neither is it in the description of development as you would expect.
Okay, so I suppose we need to turn to the officers, and we seem to have two set of plans here.
We'll come back to the officers.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, yeah, go on, Councillor Williams.
Thank you. From what I've understood, we're going to get something that looks like what is currently there, with another layer on top.
Yes, yeah.
No jutting out stair cores, extending the stair cores we have, following the existing design look.
It depends on how you describe following. I would suggest what's going on top of the.
It'll be white all the way across.
Well, you'll have you'll have a new crown on top of the existing stair cores, which will be a big brick element, which contrasts to the rhythm of the building. And then you'll obviously have a new modern designed top floor, which adds a different set of materials because it has to, basically, because it's set back. So I wouldn't say it follows it. I'd say there's more materials being added in that makes it more confusing.
Understood. And we will obviously ask the officers to confirm exactly what's proposed. On the basis that we seem to understand what we think is coming forward, does that not resolve a number of the complaints, the issues, the challenges that you came here to talk about tonight, and there isn't much else really to complain about?
I don't believe it does. So the first point here is that I think you've got a very confusing mix of materials that makes the building stand out because you're adding even more to it. That's, personal view. You obviously don't have to agree with that. The other issue here is that we're in a conservation area. You have a statutory duty to discharge, which is to preserve or enhance the conservation area. You need those visualizations and 3D views to be able to understand what you're actually being asked to approve. I don't think that's the case here because we're having to look at existing pictures, plans, and then ignoring visualizations. You need those visualizations, in my view, to have the confidence that you're discharging that statutory duty.
Accepting that the confusion on the images is suboptimal, and which is where we should be when we get to committee. I understand from what you're saying, though, that the objection primarily isn't about adding 5 flats to the roof.
No objection to the principle. The issue is the design that's proposed.
No, understood. Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I was confirming.
All right, thank you. I can't see any more hands. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Can I now invite the applicant, Andy Hollins, please? Mr. Holland, you got 5 minutes, and we'll remind you when 30 seconds left.
Giving me the opportunity to speak on this item. I think much of the arguments or prepared speech has been pretty much covered or sort of wiped out by this issue of the visual imageries that have been submitted and been added to the report tonight. Yeah, looking at it, I can see some errors in terms of those stair cores. I can see that the use of the brick protrusions going up is not what you see on that photo over there. So I'd like to apologize for that. That is not accurate. The main reason why we commissioned these rendered drawings, though, was to show the height relationship between the neighbours, particularly number 24 that you can see there in the foreground, to show that it was going to be a similar height, because in principle, one of the most important issue with this is the height going to be compatible with prevailing building heights? It is. As you've got existing, it's one of the lowest buildings in the area. And as stated, number 16 is a similar 60s era council's block. That's 4 stories already. You've got further up, you've got, Dudley House, which in 2017, similar 3-story building that got consent for an extra 3rd story in the form of a glazed addition. So there's quite a wide variety that you've got in the area already. And, if you see that against the backdrop of these newer flatted infills, such as number 24, but also the period buildings that have been retained and extended, they're 3 stories, but given the floor to height, the internal high floor to ceiling heights, they read certainly as tall or as tall as what we've got now at Granwood Court. So there's a mix of building heights there. And I think that was the main purpose for commissioning these visuals. We have gone down a bit of a rabbit hole. I take everyone's point about the stairwells projecting out more than they are. If anything, it exaggerates the impact of the development, because those floors below aren't going to be touched in any way whatsoever. We're utilizing the existing stair course. The footprint of the development is going to remain the same. I've heard what's been said about the palette of materials. I think it's fairly standard in terms of approach to extend these types of properties, in terms of continuing the brick elevations upwards over the stair cores, having the recessed rendered sections, which provides a recess element, which makes the building look more subservient. But also, we've gone to great trouble, and as detailed on the drawings in terms of the materials, we're going for an identical, because one of the significant sort of, if you look at the design elements of this building, are the balconies, which have these steel railings and glazed inset panels. And we're going to copy that. We might have to go and get specialists them done specially, but that's what we're going to do. So I think looking at all those issues, the drawings are, the renders that have been put up on the report are slightly incorrect, but we've pulled everything back. I even looked at one of the renders that you see there now, and I said to the person that did the renders, that's inaccurate. The tree that has shown total coverage and everything else. So in essence, we pulled it all back to show the height relationship. And I think that's what I'd like to stress more importantly than anything else, the height relationship. And the palette of materials we believe does fit with the street scene. All those other elements impact on the conservation area, delivering 5 new homes. There's a history of roof extensions, not immediately next door, but a few doors up to the north of the site, also in the conservation area. I think we're following a pattern of established development. And in terms of parking, we're not providing any further parking on site. That's not the intention of the development. We don't want to disturb existing residents' parking conditions. That will be built into any leases or any rental agreements, and that's obviously going to be secured by condition. And then obviously we're going to agree to a car-free scheme. Bearing all those points in mind, I hope members can grant permission tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, questions for the applicant? Yeah, Councillor Lal.
Chair, just for clarification, looking at the diagrams, are there 2 stair cores, one at the front and one at the side of the property?
You've got 3 actual stair cores existing, so we're just literally going up from those stair cores. We're not building out from those stair cores. And I know one of the residents said, well, what's going to happen to this stair core in front of her flat? It's literally going to go up, and it's a continuation of the stairs going up to create a new lobby for each of the stair cores, and that will provide access for each of the 5 flats.
The reason I ask that is that from the diagram on page 250, the stair core which is at the side of the building doesn't seem to be protruding out as much as the stair core which is at the front. Am I correct?
They do differ as built. They do differ. The stair cores, do project outwards, and that's obviously one of the reasons why we've had to continue that projection right up to the roof extension. But yeah, they do project out at differing degrees. We're just copying that.
Okay. And in terms of the rendering of the top floor, you've heard the objections in the sense that they differ from the existing brickwork of the structure. Are you still?
I think
that you've gone in tune with the building.
I think if we were going to choose a different design approach, it would look very strange, very odd. Say if we were to do a solid brick extension, it would look too heavy. You do metal cladding, which I believe they tried in 2017 on Dudley House, and that worked. I'm not sure whether it's worked quite so much when I've seen it as built. It looks a little bit too much of a variation, with the existing brick built. So I believe that render's a fairly typical material that you'd find in these types of 60s era developments, and it just provides that break and color break in terms of materials and lightness as well. And we'll be using Stowe render as well, so it's not your typical slap-on render. It would be plasticized render, so it wouldn't be subject to coloring or cracking.
Okay, Councillor Atwal.
Yeah, you're saying a car-free development. What about disabled parking?
Oh, well, if there are any blue badge holders, and that's dealt with in the condition, yes, if there are any blue badge holders that will be occupants at any of those flats at any point in time, then they will be eligible to apply for a permit. That's fairly a standard approach. I think officers will confirm that too.
Okay.
Yeah, we can confirm that's within the wording of the condition.
Okay, Councillor Luki.
Where else? I'll come to Dudley House, but where else on the Grove is there similar to this?
I think the point I'm trying to make is there's quite a variation of different housing styles on the Grove, particularly on that side of the Grove where many of your period properties have been converted into flats. Some have side annexes that have been built onto them using different materials. So the point I'm trying to make, there isn't a precise example like this, but then again, all the properties on that side of the Grove do have different variations, particularly the later 20th century infills.
Yeah, but you've emphasised Dudley House a number of times. Dudley House is not the extension on Dudley House was not built upon other flats.
It was converted into flats at the same time.
That's right. It's a nursing home conversion when there were about 40 40 individual rooms in there, and it was about the 9th iteration before it got planning permission. So that can't be used as a comparator, I would say, down at compared to Grovewood Court, nor with the other flats there, flat blocks there, or the Gothic buildings there on the Grove. Do you agree?
Each site on its own merits is the golden rule, but I think just as a principle to say, look, we've had a 3-story building in the conservation area that's had a roof extension, that's reasonable for me to draw that comparison.
To what extent have you taken the residents with you on this application? You've got a load of leaseholders in there. You're just a freehold. You just own the freehold, the ground, collect the ground rents or with insurance, whatever. To what extent have you taken these numerous flat owners with you?
I can't speak on behalf of the freeholder themselves, but you know, it's what it is. It's always a development that is sensitive. I agree. I've dealt with these as a planning officer for many years, and I think I do feel in principle personally for the existing residents of the flats, and that's why, you know, I've urged the applicant to provide more bike parking, more landscaping around the development as well, and that's going to be conditioned as well. So, but there is an element of disruption and disturbance for our construction work, which is obviously because they're on site, which is more intense than normally you'd get with a neighbouring site. So I do feel for residents in that regard, and I know there's officers have said, well, you know, working hours conditions, well, that's a different matter for legislation. But if officers want an extra tool under their belt, I'm happy for a working hours condition to be put on this application, so officers have that extra tool at their disposal should the development work on weekends outside hours. But it is quite an intensive form of development in terms of the construction process. I'll grant you that.
Right. Thank you. Go on, Councillor Bhatti.
Thank you, Chair. Just like to know that how long will it take if the permission is granted? How long will it take to build the
Well, I
top
think
floor? And is it prefabricated?
It would usually be apart from going up with the brick cladding on the elements around the sort of existing stairwells. It would be probably a lightweight frame, wooden frame, I would imagine, that would go up. Ultimately, you know, it's got to work for the building and it's got to pass building control. So, but there are lightweight solutions that you can have and just put them on, almost not prefabricated, but you can put the framework up and then you build around it.
And are you looking to redesign the stairwell?
No.
The top of it, is it always going to be flat on the top?
No, it's going to be flat. I mean, the roof is going to be flat simply because I mean, it's got 86 solar panels on top of the roof.
Thank you.
Thank you. I can't see any more hand. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Could you answer a couple of questions raised?
Yeah, if anyone has any further questions.
All right. Okay.
Sorry, did we bottom out what the actual floor plan was?
The slight clarification is, so when we're looking at the figure on the application on the report, it is both the floor plans and the site layout plan. So there is, are you talking about the bit in the 2-bedroom, 3-person unit kind of flat 3? Yep. Yes.
Put my mic on, because what we heard from the objector that they'd base their objections on a different floor plan and not that floor plan. So
I think I can help you here. Can you confirm where the outer edge of the building is? Is it the thick black lines or is it the less highly visible grey bits on the side?
So this is the outline. It's the still envelope of the building at the lower ground floors. So that's not changing. The thick black line is the top floor, the new floor. So the top floor sits black.
And, yeah, I think we understand that, Matthew. It's just that when you look at the stairwells, pointing to the stairwells, 3 of them, that the objector was suggesting that they would actually protrude further than the current building. But if that sort of what looks like paving stone is the current building, they're not. They're flush up against it. And it's only once you get above the height of the current building that they stand, that there's any prominence to them. Is that?
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. So the kind of the tiles are is the roof space for the proposed units. So
Thank you very much.
There's not going to be protruding balconies on the top story. There'll be roof terraces.
Thank you. Councillor Luki?
You had an aerial view up just before these ones. Can you bring that back for us, please? There you go. Can you make that a little bit bigger? Sorry? Well, zoom in, zoom. Yeah. Okay. So you've got just a bit. Yeah, that's it. Leave it there. Yeah. So where you've got in the middle there, in the centre there, you've got the black. You've got the black roofs. That's Grovewood Court. So and you've got that, and you've got you've got number 24. Whatever we call that, I can't remember. It's been a long time since I've canvassed it. But Wayview Court, whatever. So you've got low heights there. You've got low height. You've got that taller Wyndham Lodge. You've got Wyndham Lodge with a pitch roof there. But the rest of them around there, you've got 53 Eversley Crescent across the road to the left, and then you've got the fairways behind. So we're looking at an extra floor there. On top, and that's a black roof, and the materials there are very different to what's being proposed. This is if you look at the Spring Grove Conservation Area, the chapter on conservation areas. If you look at the Spring Grove one, you'll find that these buildings are they're referred to in that document. And they're part of the character. Adding an extra unit on there. If you want to zoom out a bit, you will see how low this is. Oh, not that far, okay, but yeah. You will see how low this is compared to the others, and how it fits into the rest of the old Davis estate there, and the former Spring Grove estate there across the road. So this is just overdevelopment, and this is not. This will have a detrimental impact on the conservation area. I would like to move refusal on this, Chair. Oh, we're not debating now. Okay, all right. Oh, okay. I thought we'd moved on to a debate because the officers didn't have any answers there. All right. Okay.
No one has any further questions.
Debate now. Anybody wants to? Yeah, go on, Councillor William.
Well, as I know Tony wants to move, I'll just make my comments. I mean, to me, there was a reason this was delegated decision to begin with before it was called in. It's 5 flats on a building that is fundamentally going to look the same and is going to fit in. And I see lots of 4- and 5-story buildings in that area. And I just can't see what the objection is fundamentally. I think it's pretty shoddy that we got the rubbish image, and we had to do that whole song and dance, which I hope we can avoid in future applications. But I fundamentally can't see an objection to this. So I would move something, but I know Tony wants to move, so I'll let him do that. But that's my view anyway.
Okay. Anybody moving anything? Are you moving anything, Tony? Or
yeah, I'll continue. I'll continue, Chair.
Yeah.
This is not, this is not appropriate for the within the conservation area. It's not the same materials. That's as described, even described by the applicant's planning consultant. The details on the application form are incomplete. Again, we find this sometimes, but I would like to say this is a detrimental impact on the conservation area. It's visually different, as a case officer did actually say at the start of the start of the presentation, and it's got poor design quality. It'll imbalance the conservation area. That's why I would move refusal.
Can I take a seconder, please, for that? Sorry, Tony, nobody's seconding it. So, yeah, go on.
I'd like to recommend approval.
Okay, seconder for approval. Okay, thank you. I'll take a vote on that. For the approval, it's been approved and seconded. Yeah. Have you got it? Okay, against? Abstentions? So it's been approved. All right, thank you very much. Item 7 now. I believe everybody had a look at addendum report. On page 12 of addendum report, there's a report on performance of development management and planning enforcement March 23. And this report is recommended for members to note. I hope everybody had a look at it. So are you happy with this? Noted. Any comments on that? Yeah. Noted. Okay, thank you. Item 8, I am not aware of any other business. Item 9, the next meeting is going to be 4th of May 2023. And with that, we close the meeting. Thank you very much for the attendance.
Thank you very much, Chair, for giving us some time to open our fast.